Welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and one of the questions I got from season 1 was how come my website is called airu.tv? Airu, AIRU.tv is the website because AirU is something that I trademarked. It was for Addicts in Recovery United. And because I think if you're recovering from any addiction, whether it's alcohol, nicotine, drugs, or any kind of addiction, workaholics, overeating, anything, getting into recovery is an important step. And it's helpful, it's almost mandatory to have some support, and it's a community of like-minded people. So I talk about it united. One of my fantasies is to be in the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York and have an AirU banner. But we're working on that. There's more to come, I hope. But I do this as a public service, but I do have an ulterior motive, and that is to get you to buy this book, Freedom. Freedom, and it's about your path to recovery. Now, it is frankly, about mine. But my point is that everyone's path is different, and you need to walk yours. Walk yours with confidence, with your head held high, looking people in the eye. And when I was in the throes of my addiction, I wasn't able to do that. In recovery, I can. And so this is a book that's dedicated to giving you the self-confidence that you can do it too. And if you're walking a path of recovery, it's good to have someone else's hand to hold once in a while, someone to tell you when you're getting a little dicey, a little slippery, and it's time to work on your program a little bit harder, whatever that program is. And when I walk my path, I know it. When we all put our foot wrong, and don't put yourself down, because even if you trip and stumble and fall, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep walking. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is there may be others walking different paths, and they may say, "Come walk my path." But if their path is not yours, don't give in to that temptation, because not all communities are going to be supportive for you. And if you find yourself in a community that's not supporting you, find one that works for you. Because what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. What works for you may not work for me. But something will work, and it's our job to find it. And the only guide that I follow is an inner resonance. This inner resonance will teach me, if I pay attention to it. And this is the other thing that I talk about quite a bit on this show and others, that you have to have some way to become aware of what is and is not resonating within you, and to trust yourself. When we're in the throes of addiction, we stop trusting ourselves because our word was not our bond. All addicts lie, but all addicts can become truthful. We can all do it. And if my example is anything to go by, it's not easy, but it gets easier. So keep doing what you need to do for yourself, and put yourself first when it comes to these types of decisions, because no one can tell you what to do. Only this inner resonance will be your valuable guide, your only true guide. And you will know when you are not resonating. You will feel anxious or aggravated or angry. And when you feel calm, when you feel a sense of peace and serenity, you know you're walking your path. And this is valuable feedback, and the universe will give it to you. If you have no other guide, the universe will be your guide. Now, in season 1, we had a senior correspondent from Los Angeles, but this year he wants me to call him the senior anger consultant from Los Angeles, because Rick Rosner will be on the show, and he will tell us about what's getting him anxious, getting him aggravated, getting him angry. And we'll talk a little bit about what we can do. And another segment of the show will be dedicated to yoga practices. And we have a yoga therapist, Yudhithra, who joins us. And he is an experienced teacher. He's also a science teacher, but he's also marrying the principles of yoga, which are spiritual in nature, and with the scientific background that he has. And so he's giving us a perspective that I learned a great deal from him and from others in Ananda, which is here in Palo Alto, Northern California. But I'm coming live, well, as live as I get, from San Francisco, from Edge Studios. And it's a very warm day in San Francisco. I used to live here and it didn't get this warm. We're going through a heat spell. But, even then, you know how to take care of yourself. You go from a cool home to a cool car to a cool office, and you don't have to suffer the heat as much. But that's my privilege speaking, because there are some people that are out on the streets that can't get a break from the heat. And so you have to keep them in mind as well. Now, lots of things are going on in the world today, and sometimes I allow myself to get worried, to get upset about what's going on in the world. But I can always remember, if I become aware, if I know that I'm getting agitated, if I know that I'm getting anxious, I have the tools and techniques that have been taught to me, some that didn't work and some that did. And the ones that did, I've retained and used to help myself calm down, because I make the best decisions when I'm calm. The decisions I make when I'm angry, agitated, or anxious, triple A's, those decisions always backfired in some way, hurt someone or hurt myself. But the decisions when I'm calm, peaceful, and serene, these decisions, the universe tells me, are the better ways to be. So try to stay calm and learn the ways that you can calm down. And these are the ways that we are going to go forward together, and we'll be united in recovery. And this is episode 1 of season 2. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Viewers from last season will be familiar with this current episode, but scrolling across the bottom of the screen is their website, airu.tv. So if you want to catch up on episodes from season 1, please do. But joining me from last season and the first episode of season 2 is Rick Rosner, our senior correspondent from Los Angeles. Rick, hello.
I'm your senior anger correspondent because I have a lot of gripes. I'm going to start with a short gripe that I share with tens of millions of Americans, most of them Democrats, which is that Trump had a particularly Trumpy last couple days.
Oh, yes.
Saying insane crap that Kamala Harris is mentally deficient, that he is going to solve crime by having one day of violence that'll clear it up, which people are comparing to Kristallnacht, which was a Hitler thing,
right,
or the Purge. Sorry, phone's going, but I'm going to ignore it. And he can say whatever he wants. He won't lose any of his followers. He does have people walking out of his rallies because he just kind of rambles for 2 hours, but those people are still going to vote for him. And then, I go on, lately I've been tweeting, if you're still voting for Trump after everything we've learned about him, you're going to hell. And is that doesn't affect, so-called evangelicals, Christians who are still in his corner. They compare him to David of the Bible, King David.
Right.
Who did a lot of bad stuff before he came to God, before he, became a good man. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any evidence that Trump has gotten any better. I think he's been an a-hole and he just keeps being a bigger and bigger a-hole. So that's a standard gripe right now.
Right. And I think until the election, there's going to be a lot of that kind of tension. And that type of thing that keeps us from remaining calm. And I know that I suffer from this too. My mother would turn the channel, and that was her way. If anytime anything related to that person came on the TV, she would turn it off or onto another channel. And so that was her coping mechanism. And so when he does something like, obviously, Kamala Harris is anything but mentally deficient. She's a former prosecutor, DA, senator. And if you watched any of those Senate hearings where she was grilling people, she was extraordinarily effective, one of the best at confronting people, asking difficult questions for them to answer. And very sharp. And then obviously she, by most accounts, anyone but a dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter conceded that she won the first debate handily.
My wife, does the same thing, changes the channel. And I've read that Republicans, while FDR was president in the 30s and 40s, couldn't even say his name. They'd call him that man.
Yeah. There was an episode on All in the Family. Do you remember that with Carol O'Connor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where he said it to the woman, B. Arthur, who later did a spinoff called Maude. And he said, this country was ruined by President Roosevelt. He stretched it out, and it just set her off, which is what his intention was, of course.
Yeah, I didn't love Norman Lear's shows, All in the Family and Maude, and because there was just so much arguing.
Yes, that was.
Yeah, now that's what we go on these podcasty things, and that's what we do all day.
Right. And it's good. It's like in the news media, they say if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And there's like that kind of thing with the viewership. They wanted to see this. But I remember political shows where people would argue and be nasty to each other. And it was just not fun to watch. And so then you would turn into something on PBS like I can't remember now, the McNeil
Lehrer report. McNeil Lehrer.
Yeah, McNeil Lehrer. And, they would have intelligent discussions. And I wonder if that's, at all possible. Can you get viewership with intelligent discussion?
I don't know. I mean, like when, we were younger, it was Johnny Carson that, you'd either have Tom Snyder's chain smoking and, talking to somebody in a not fun way, or you go to Johnny Carson and he'd have like 2 or 3 fun guests lined up on the couch, like goofing on each other. And, he owned late night TV because it was fun talk.
Right. And I think there's a hunger out there for now. And I think there's a distaste for the chaos of the past, the recent past. And that was one of the reasons I think Biden got elected, was a return to normalcy and to common decency. It's where we talk respectfully to one another instead of, the insults and put downs, which is really, even, Second Bush's nicknames for people, that was in good spirit.
Yeah. I mean, people who I think he did a bad job as president, but the saying was that, you'd want to have a beer with him.
Yeah.
He seems in post-presidential life, he seems like a pretty decent guy.
Yeah.
I wish he would endorse Harris, but that's probably, one step too far for him.
Yes.
But can I get to my more esoteric or more individual gripe?
Yes.
Which is, I'm worried I'm getting dumber. So my claim to fame in life is that I've got like an insanely high IQ.
Right.
But with age, I'm worried that that's going away, along with, my sex drive, my bench press, my hair, the blackness of my hair, that's gone. I'm a freaking ghost now. My wife bought me some Just for Men, but I've been too lazy to put it on so far. Also, there's do not overuse Just for Men. Take a toothbrush and just brush a little on here and there. If you go fully black or fully brown, it's obvious.
Okay, I'm going to make a note here. Just for Men.
Okay.
I was thinking of dyeing my beard purple, but then
I did that for a while. I mean, that's fun. because my kid did her hair purple, but she had a ton left over, so I jumped in and used the rest of it.
Well, I brought it up to my wife, and that discouraged it. So I don't think I'm going to go purple.
Yeah, it was too late. By the time my wife started yelling, it was already in my hair.
There you go.
But so
the idea is, with age, you are losing some of the vim and vigor of youth. Is that
I've been taking a zillion naps, and is it just because I'm giving into naps and drinking less coffee, or am I just winding down? Now, so the IQ tests I take are to try to measure the highest IQs in the world, and some of these freaking tests take 200 hours to work through all these problems.
Wow.
And I look at them, it's like, I can't do that anymore. I don't have 200 hours to waste on bullshit.
Right.
So does that mean I'm stupider, that my brain is, they have a euphemism for it in the IQ field. It's fluid intelligence, raw problem solving ability turning into crystallized intelligence, being, a wily old bastard who may not be as smart as the youngsters, but has learned more tricks.
Yes. I can't remember the phrase, but one of my teachers back in high school used, old age and treachery will overcome youth and something. I can't remember.
Right.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, there's a show called Slow Horses.
Yeah, I love that show.
So Gary Oldman plays this old, dirty slob,
right,
who runs the branch of MI5 where you get sent if you screwed up or if you have a very bad personality, can't work with others. Right. And he wears a filthy coat. His
doesn't shower.
Right. So but he outthinks everybody because by looking so horrible,
they underestimate him.
Right.
Yeah. No, the show's brilliant, and he must love playing that character. I mean, all he tries to do is be offensive to others.
Right. So, though it gives me, I've got, I don't know, a certain form of body dysmorphia where I've got a phobia of letting my abs go, as people do. Uh-huh. And he plays that part with his stomach just gone,
Yeah. Well, it's not gone; it's extended.
Right. I mean, just there's no muscle flex within a mile of his stomach.
Can you see him doing push-ups? No.
Not the character, but Gary Oldman. He's played a zillion characters who are
Yeah. No, he's a great actor, and I think he just nails that part. So yeah, he's an example of someone who just let himself go, as he said in one episode. It was a wry statement from him. He was deliberately letting himself go for appearance's sake. He wanted people to leave him alone, and that was one way for them to do it, because he didn't really think too highly of his fellow professionals.
And every episode shows why he's correct to think that. but I look at him and I look at myself and I freak out because, I mean, even if I'm not losing it now, I'm gonna be. I mean, we can't hold on forever.
Right.
And I keep turning to science, like solved fatness in the last year or so. If you don't want to be fat, you don't have to be fat anymore. You can take Ozempic, or there are some other ones with semi-glutamides or something.
Right.
And if you're super fat, insurance, and you got decent insurance, they'll pay to knock it down. And if you're a celebrity and you're only like 10 pounds beyond your ideal, what you think would be great, you can pay, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 a month to get it.
Right.
And
these are real concerns. My mother is 97, and we've just had to move her into a care facility. And she might have months, but she won't have years left. And when I would talk to her, it was clear that her mind was still there, and that's no longer the case. And so it's almost inevitable. Although they're making just here in San Mateo, Menlo Park, where I live, it's a biotech firm just came out with a drug that treats advanced lung cancer and extends the life. And so,
Nice.
all of that is promising. And will we be too old?
I'm trying to hold on.
Yeah, yeah.
When we were kids, people used to say a lot of stuff like it was their time. That you had the idea that that old people were okay with passing on.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it's my experience with old people who have passed on that nobody wanted to frickin' die.
Right. And that's also my experience as well. If they could extend their lives, they would, by choice, they would. Of course, you don't want to be artificially kept alive with a machine or something like that, and that type of thing where you're.
Well, depends on the machine. If you can be if it's like on Futurama where you're a head in a bottle on a robot body walking around, that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And but I'm just talking about your mental faculties when they leave you. I think that is time. But I also remember a story I read when I was in the 3rd grade, and it was about a Native American who was a brave warrior and then a chief and then an elder statesman. And then he just realized that he was no longer giving to his society. And he walked up to the mountaintop and just let the elements take him. And it was a conscious choice on his part. Made a profound impression.
But the elements taking him, I mean, he's still like, once you're dead, it doesn't matter how miserable it was as you died, that, it's erased along with your consciousness. But still, that's still a terrible way to go. Even
I would think, yeah. But, that's the kind of discipline I suppose that person had, which the majority of us probably do not have.
Mm-hmm.
But, and just the things that you're talking about, I used to be a distance runner and then I became a jogger and now I'm a walker, and that is sometimes in question. And that is really causing me to really take all the tools and techniques that I have to remain calm. Because if I dwell on that, what if I can't walk anymore? Or my morning walks, my doing my spiritual rituals. If I can't do that, if I go down that road, it's like falling into a rabbit hole that you can't get out of. So I try not to dwell on it. And when I when it does pop into my head, I remember to be grateful that I can do it today.
Yeah, I have a hip that hasn't broken out into full-on arthritis, but I can tell that if I don't pay attention to it and pay attention to what I do, it wants to.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's another related thing, which is I've been married for 33 years. So I never was a playa. I wanted to be, but I just couldn't pull it off. Yeah. But like there's so many more tools for playas, from Tinder to there's a secret Tinder if you're super hot or famous called Raya.
No, I did not. Obviously, I did not.
So you have to be invited on the basis of either being famous or just super good looking. And I know somebody on Raya, and if they're a little down in the dumps, they just go on there and they hook up with, Miss Indonesia 2016.
What do you do when you hook up? You swipe right or what's
I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
I can't get within a mile, but I see all this technology for hooking up. Plus the culture has changed to be much more nerd friendly than when I was trying to get laid.
Right.
But I'm like, I missed that. I missed all these windows where, it would have been easier.
Oh yeah, and also, I think I talked to some of my chess friends, and that there's people making $1 gazillion on YouTube now, And that just passed when I was in my prime. I would have been doing that. And, so, but, my attitude towards all of that is good for them. I'm happy for them because, it wasn't available to me, but that doesn't mean that I should resent them for it.
No,
But,
I don't. I resent time.
yeah. Well, those are two great gripes. I really appreciate you joining me again on episode 1 of season 2. You've been a very consistent contributor, and I really appreciate it, Rick.
Surely. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. That was Rick Rosner, a senior correspondent from Los Angeles. And this has been episode 1 of season 2. Hello, thanks for tuning in to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and this is episode 1 of season 2. And if you didn't see season 1, you can go to the website airu.tv, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, and you can see all the videos from season 1. But this segment is devoted to yoga, and we have a yoga teacher and therapist that I'm going to bring on now. Yudhishthira, thank you for joining me.
Jim, it is absolutely my pleasure.
You're so kind to say, and I know you mean it. And what's the subject today that we're going to talk about?
Well, Jim, the last season we covered the yamas and niyamas,
right,
and added to that, in order to make 12, we added the practice of sadhana, that is the daily practices that, I call it yoga, but honestly, it doesn't matter what sort of context someone is in. Almost anybody who gets serious about what is permanent and true within them, whatever spiritual path they follow, there's going to be some version of sadhana, and there's going to be some version of selfless service.
Right.
And there's going to be some version of the yamas and niyamas. So I thought that we would sort of pick up about the yamas and niyamas and where they sort of, what comes next.
Uh-huh.
And what is the sort of the big view of what's going on from a yogi perspective.
Right.
And then we'll make our way to the chakras.
Okay. So you're trying to tell me that yoga is more than just poses?
Yoga is absolutely more than poses, and it is compatible with any spiritual path.
This is the book that I wrote, Freedom, which is shown on my back screen, that it's about your path to recovery, and it was dedicated to people that have suffered from addiction. And I don't tell them, what path to follow. It's for each individual to explore and to find their own path and to walk it with their head held high, looking people in the eye, and be proud of yourself for whatever path you're following, if you're overcome whatever it is that you've suffered from in the past. And the yoga practice that I found at Ananda, where I met you, has been very helpful for me. And I know that you don't, try to advertise or express that you're coming, that you have the path to follow. And what you just said reminds me that it's very eclectic, very open-ended in terms of who can learn from you and who can help discover their path to follow.
I was talking with some friends, and there's a couple things I want to add to what you just shared. Number one is I've read your book, and it's beautifully done.
Thank you.
And does indeed make it clear that the path that one person follows is not going to look necessarily like someone else.
Mhm.
And that's one of the essential realities about the spiritual path, is that every single one of us, the 8 billion of us nearly on the planet, and every living creature on the
Yes.
planet has an individual pathway back to their source. Um, the other is that while this path of yoga is not in any way incompatible with any other spiritual teaching, it is, when one begins to step onto this path of yoga, very single pointed.
Mm.
As you are very, very clear about what your goal is, what your destination is, what you're trying to accomplish. You know, the big questions that we all ask at some point, and that religions around the world don't answer satisfactorily, came up. As you know, I teach science in the classroom as well.
Right.
And I was in the middle with my middle schoolers,
Mhm.
and they are precocious at times and
Mhm.
fun and wise
Mhm.
and way beyond their years. And they all also, are in a school where they're learning yoga and practice yoga postures and
Right.
pranayama. They practice these things every single day.
Sure.
And so they're a little bit ahead of the curve in some ways than a lot of other kids. And so I was in this class and I said, there is no question that can't be answered by either the natural sciences, biology, geology, chemistry, physics, or the science of yoga. And one young man, who's, by the way, been in my science classes since he was probably 5,
Mhm.
he raised his hand and he said, "What is the source of consciousness?"
Ah.
So he
Let's get
landed
to the
on
chase. Cut to the chase.
he landed on the one question that no one can properly answer,
Right.
and that is the point, is that you have to begin somewhere. And if you're looking at it purely from a physical science point of view, uh, they the physical sciences of the world out there, try to answer this in terms of the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that's great. I get it. As a scientist, I understand to a certain degree. What is not understood or cannot be grasped is the magnitude of the energy and the speed at which expansion took place. Those things are way beyond, our minds don't think that
Right.
way.
We can't, grapple with it.
And yet there's always a question, well, what about right before the Big Bang?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's that same question.
Right.
What is the nature of what is the nature of consciousness? What's the origin of consciousness? So anyway, I'm not sure where we went, but anyway.
Well, it was the extent of yoga practice and what it can do for you, and what even that some questions may be unanswerable, I think, is how we.
Okay, well, and it's it's all to say that regardless of what the spiritual path is individually, that what yoga does is to lay out the natural stages of progression that any soul is going to go through, no matter what that individual soul's path looks like. I'm avoiding using gender here because it immediately reduces the topic into something that is lesser rather than greater.
Yes.
Because it's so tempting to say she or he. And it just, that immediately brings things down, because at the level of the soul, we are neither he nor she.
Yes.
It's just that we happen to be, you and I, in aging male bodies. And so we identify with aging male bodies, and, but if we were in a young female body, we would be identified with that young female body. And
Right.
given the number of lifetimes that we are offered in the yogic scheme of things, we get to be all of those things.
Yes. And
Both not only gender, but also good guys, bad guys, You know,
Right.
we get to be the people who make lots of money and people who have no money.
Right. And I do believe that the answers that we try to grapple with are answered, and when we can connect the inside with something greater than ourselves, and that inside is genderless, and what is greater than ourselves can be genderless as well. Although, for convenience sake, for the language sake, we often, use words.
It's true.
Uh,
When we're at Ananda, and you know, I don't mean to dismiss the value of religions,
mhm.
because religions
Not at
have
all.
definite value. You know, there's a scientific metric called specific gravity.
Mhm.
It's actually not used quite so much any longer, but when I was in school, specific gravity was one of the like SI units, one of the international
Right.
standards.
Right.
And in terms of solids and liquids, the standard was water at a certain temperature, you know, and a certain volume. And if something had a higher specific gravity than water, it would sink.
Right.
If it had the same specific gravity as water, it would move down about halfway and stay there.
Mhm.
If it had a lighter specific gravity, it would rise and float on top.
Right.
And what my teacher, Swami Kriyananda, oftentimes would use was there's a spiritual gravity, a spiritual specific gravity that identifies where we are spiritually speaking.
It's a very good image.
It really is. And the thing is that if you had a large enough container and a large enough samples, that you would find that similar objects, similar substances would tend to hang out together. And that's the way it is in religion,
Mhm.
that we have a lot of billions of these souls on the planet at various levels of spiritual growth,
Right.
and they tend to be drawn to those groups of people that are sort of in their same place.
Mhm.
And their leaders tend to be someone who's just a little bit higher.
Right.
And so we have all these religions, and it's perfect. We
Yeah.
need them as a way of gathering people together to make spiritual progress. And so that in the next incarnation, now this is purely yoga and Buddhism and some
Mhm.
others, that this idea of reincarnation is simply a way of realizing there's a lot to work out.
Yes. And one
And
more
it
time may
takes
not
more
be
than
enough.
one time.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it provides a sense of community, which I think as social creatures.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and so this path of yoga, you know, I want to always, as these programs go on, we're going to make our way to what are called the chakras, the energy system of the chakras. And it's a very real thing, but it's also a very non-material thing.
Right.
And for those people who are still on the planet, there's a consciousness that's interesting here on the planet right now, because there's a lot of people who are still grounded in the material reality of things, and yet who easily make use of non-material realities. And you and I are here with one another virtually, and yet people can have the same virtual connection and be talking about very material things, like it's not real,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that you know, and but we'll flip on a light switch and have a flow of electrons
Right.
that may or may not be moving through a wire, but close
Right.
to the wire, and makes a light bulb go on. We don't think a thing about that. Of course, we
Right.
expect that to work. So, so it's an interesting time that we're in. And for those people who are able to move towards more of the energetic side of things, chakras, the chakra system totally makes sense.
And where does you spoke to me one time about the limbs of yoga, and
Yeah.
where do the chakras fit in, or
Well,
is that a valid question?
the chakras are a very internal set of lenses through which our karma is projected into the life that we're living. However, as we live more and more completely in the chakras moving their way upward, we also find ourselves in a natural place of being more relaxed, having our attention more focused, and being able to expand our sense of what is true beyond the material world.
Right.
And the limbs of yoga are simply a pathway that everybody's going to follow in their spiritual progression. The yamas that we talked about last season are simply the things you don't want to do in the physical world if you're going to get along well.
Right.
You don't want to cause harm. You don't want to injure others. You don't want to try to lie your way through situations.
Right.
You know, you don't want to try to steal things from other people, material or non-material. You don't want to hoard all the stuff that you can possibly get.
Right.
It doesn't lead to happiness.
No.
And you want to begin to live life in a way that is flowing, that is fluid,
Yes.
that feels easeful.
When
And
you're
all
in the
those
flow,
are the
you know
yamas.
it. When you're in the flow, you know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I was, you know, we've all had these experiences of being in a state of grace where it feels like, you know, we're not thinking about it. The right people come to us, the right situations come up, and you know when you're in that flow.
Yep.
You know, you don't have, but try to describe it to somebody.
Right.
Boy, things can fall apart pretty quickly.
Yes.
Because it can be both fragile, which I don't think it is, but rather it can be challenging for us to hang on to it, which is certainly true. But then there are the niyamas that we talked about last time, which are these things that we really want to do. We want to be, you know, contented with what comes our way.
Right.
We want to be
loving, joyous, and free.
Yeah, we want to be clean of hearts and mind. We want to live our lives in a state that is as pure as we can.
Yes.
And whether it's the foods we eat or the air we breathe or the company we keep. And so there are all of these things. We want to take challenges that come to us in stride and make the best of them. You know, we want to be able to turn our attention inward and see, how am I doing in the moment? And we also really want to find what aspect of God works for us.
Right.
You know, and so whether it's, you know, being in nature in the redwoods,
yes,
or whether it's being in front of your altar with a picture of your guru,
right?
You know, whatever it is, flowers. You know,
I had someone tell me that theirs was the Pacific Ocean.
Absolutely, because
right? Yeah,
go to the ocean and close your eyes,
right?
And it's pretty easy to settle in and stop your mind.
I think most of us have had that experience. Maybe not with the Pacific Ocean, but even lakeside. Sometimes I get that feeling.
You know, it's always funny that they've called it the Pacific Ocean because most of it is not Pacific at all. You know?
Yes,
it can get pretty wild. But after those, you know, we have earned the right. My guru's guru, Sri Yukteswar, described the value of the yamas and niyamas and working on them as a development of what he called moral courage. It gives you the sense of self-confidence,
right,
to be able to continue to move forward. And so these 8 limbs of yoga that follow the yamas and niyamas are in order the practice of asana, which most people think of as yoga postures. Not wrong. It's just that most yoga postures originally were about, could I sit to meditate? Can I be comfortable and still for around 3 hours? I'm not sure why they came up with that number, but that's a number that always appears. And try it. Can you hold your body still and comfortable for 3 minutes?
Right.
For 30 minutes,
right.
And much less 3 hours. So the ability to do that is asana, but we practice it in many different forms. Pranayama is the next stage, And pranayama is usually connected to breathing exercises. And the breath is simply a vehicle by which we can get to the energy that makes us alive,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me open my eyes, that makes breath flow through me. When the prana leaves, that breath is no longer flowing through me. And so one of the ways in which yogis get control of prana is to, first of all, get control of it in usable small ways, watching the breath.
Right.
But one of the ways that prana becomes mastered is by ceasing the breath, not dying per se,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to live without the physical flow. So yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and then you come to this next stage, which begins the real practice of yoga, which is called pratyahara. Now, pratyahara is when we take the energy that goes out towards the senses, eyes, ears, smell, taste, and feel, and we begin to withdraw it and bring it inward. Anybody who has ever meditated successfully can get to that point by intention. But you mentioned the ocean, and the same is true of forests,
Yes.
mountains, deserts, places that are deeply spiritual and free of the vibration of human beings. Many people in those settings can close their eyes and come to a place of pratyahara like that.
Right.
So again, it's important to understand that these are natural stages.
Right.
You don't need to fight and claw your way to them. You know,
Yes.
they do take practice to do it intentionally,
Right.
but we're built for it. We're made for it.
And most of us have felt it, whether it's in a mountain side or wherever it is. We felt it at some point. So most of us know what you're talking about on some level, but the intentionality is not always present. And that was one of the things that I learned was that, I didn't have to wait until I was in an environment that was comfortable for me. I could be comfortable in most environments. Some environments I need to just avoid, but most of them I can regain my composure, my calm sense of serenity, and I can do this, but I do this intentionally, and that was something that I didn't really appreciate, even intellectually, that yoga was around doing that, making you capable of saying at any time, however, if you're stressed, anxious, agitated, you can. And for me, it starts with a deep breath. And that breathing, the mind can calm the body and the body can calm the mind. And then all of a sudden, it seems like I have the ability to intentionally connect with everything around me and think it's okay. I'm safe, I'm secure, everything is just fine. And the anxiety leaves my body and I could feel it going. And this is something that I've been taught, but over the time, I've gained confidence that I can do this. I just need to become aware that I'm anxious or agitated. And once that awareness kicks in, then I have the tools and techniques to help me get back to the state of grace, as you were talking about earlier.
Well, and that's, and Jim, really, you just nailed it perfectly, which is that, the ability to do this individually in yoga terms, at least, comes in two basic ways, either meditation techniques
Mm-hmm.
or mantra, one of the two. And it depends on the teacher and the tradition.
Sure.
But in every spiritual path, you'll find something that will get you there. For example, the Roman Catholics have the rosary.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And many great Catholic saints came to a place, they moved through all these stages of yoga through the rosary and came to a place where they could no longer practice, they could no longer move a bead. They could no longer say a word because everything had settled into stillness. And all this sets the stage for the rest of what happens. And I'll just say the words, and we can wrap up, pretty much after that. But these last three stages of yoga are sometimes grouped together with one word called samyama.
Samyama.
Samyama is it's a bundling together of things that happen pretty quickly. Dharana, which is to concentrate, that is you've turned your attention inward and you're concentrating on God or some aspect of God.
Right.
So it might be peace or joy or love, something
Right.
like that. And then absorption, you become that thing that you're focused on, where you are no longer an individual. And then comes this expansion, which is called samadhi. And for great saints, and again, of all traditions,
Right.
Great saints and sages and prophets, these are people who have come to this stage of samadhi and are able to stay in that place consciously, but also interact in the world in order to uplift and benefit others. So each of those stages lines up with the chakras. And the chakras themselves have a lot of ways of looking at them. And perhaps we can pick it up there next time.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me again. And I look forward to starting with the chakras the next time we meet.
All right.
All right. So I'll take you off stage and say goodbye to the viewing audience.
All right.
Thanks
Blessings,
again.
Jim.
Well, you just sort of just outlined what we're going to do this season, season 2 of Calm Down with James Eade. And I believe that we're all going to make a little bit of progress. And it's not a race, it's not a sprint or a marathon. We're going to do it at our own pace. And that pace, only you can tell me. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Love Wise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.